Breaking Bad, widely known as one of the greatest television series ever made. First premiered in 2008, created by Vince Gilligan. His pitch for the entire show was simple: take a good man and turn him into a bad one. From that came Walter White. Walter White starts as everything society tells you to respect: educated, hardworking, a family man. Then comes the diagnosis, stage 3 lung cancer, and something shifts. But here's a question this video is really asking: did the cancer create Walter White, or was it permission to become who he already was? Here on the Dark Triad, we take characters from film and television and dissect who they really are. 3 psychological traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Together, they form what psychologists call the Dark Triad. Today we'll find out how Walter White not only developed these traits, but perfected them. Now let's start with narcissism. When most people hear that word, they think of self-obsession, someone who talks about themselves too much, or they like to toot their own horn. But Walter White's narcissism is something far more calculated than that. It's an unshakable belief that you're exceptional, that the rules that apply to everyone else simply don't apply to you, and that anyone who challenges that belief is not just wrong, but a threat. But what makes him fascinating is that his narcissism isn't obvious to those around him, which is precisely what makes him so dangerous. He hides behind a facade of sacrifice and family, using them as an excuse for everything underneath. For most of the show, Walter convinces himself, and us, that everything he does is for other people, until the very last episode when he finally decides to tell the truth.
So you're going to the police?
They'll be coming to me.
Even here in his final moments, Walter isn't running. He's controlling the narrative, still deciding how this ends on his terms. Even his final act of supposed generosity is choreographed. Every detail is calculated.
I liked it. I was good at it.
This way, he's not surrendering. He's directing how his end will go. That single moment dismantles everything. The facade he spent years constructing, gone in one sentence. It confirms what the audience had suspected for years, that the terminal diagnosis wasn't what created Walter White. It was just the excuse he needed to finally become who he always believed he was. Someone who deserved more than a classroom and a second job at a car wash. This is what separates Walter White's narcissism from simple arrogance. Arrogance is loud. Walter White's narcissism was patient. It waited. And once that mask came off, it never went back on. From the very beginning, something was brewing underneath the surface, and it was only a matter of time before its true colours came to light. But narcissism alone doesn't make Walter White dangerous. What makes him truly terrifying are the other complexities that hide underneath the mask he shows everyone. If you've watched the series, you will know that Walter White would do anything to protect his empire. That brings us to Machiavellianism, named after the Italian philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli, who essentially argued that manipulation, deception, and strategy aren't just moral failures, but tools, and in the right hands they're weapons. Walter White didn't just read that philosophy, he adapted it and made it his own. The moment that defined his Machiavellianism more than any other comes in season 4. Gus Fring, his employer, his rival, and the most controlled man in the room, is about to have Jesse kill him. Walter has no leverage or power, no way out through negotiation, so he has to think of something. Jesse's first instinct is violence, direct and obvious, but Walter thinks differently. This scene clearly shows the difference between the two. While Jesse is thinking like a criminal, Walter is thinking like a strategist. But the plan he settles on is one that most people wouldn't even be capable of imagining. He poisons a child. Brock, the young son of Jesse's girlfriend, is secretly poisoned by Walter using a rare plant called Lily of the Valley. This was carefully calculated to make Brock seriously ill, but not to kill him. Sole purpose being to make Jesse believe Gus was responsible, to turn Jesse's grief and rage into a weapon pointed in the right direction.
No.
In this moment, Jesse genuinely believes Gus poisoned Brock using the resin. But what he doesn't know is that Walter has engineered every single detail of this reaction. The panic, the grief, the rage, all of it controlled from a distance. And when Jesse suspects Walter, he turns that rage on him, but Walter doesn't flinch. He accepts his fate because he knows exactly how this ends. Walter's plan was working flawlessly. Jesse's back on his side, Gus is the enemy, and not a single person in the hospital room suspects a thing. But watch this moment carefully, because that brief flicker isn't just guilt showing, it's relief that his performance held together. And there it is, no confession or confrontation, just a plant in a garden that tells you everything you need to know about Walter White. He didn't cross a line in a moment of desperation. He sat down, thought it through, and decided that winning despite a child's suffering was an acceptable cost. But that's exactly what Niccolo Machiavelli teaches, Machiavellianism in its purest form. And Walter executed it with the same calm precision he once used to teach chemistry to teenagers with. And now we have the final trait that Walter White kept hidden from those around him. This is what separates Walter from every other manipulator within the Dark Triad. A Machiavellian can still feel. They might lose sleep over their decisions, and a lot of the time they will justify their actions late at night. But what that means is there's still something human operating underneath their strategy. But psychopathy removes that entirely. Psychopathy isn't about rage or violence, well, in the way that most people imagine it. It's about the absence of these very human emotions you and I feel. It's the absence of any emotional response to the suffering of others. And by the time Breaking Bad reaches its peak, Walter White feels nothing. The scene that proves this beyond any doubt comes in season 2, long before Walter becomes Heisenberg in name. This was long before the empire he had built, when he was still supposedly a desperate man doing desperate things for his family. He's come to talk to Jesse, that's all, a father figure checking on someone he claims to care about. And in this moment, Walter sees everything he needs to see. Jesse is deep in his addiction, and then something else catches his eye. Jesse's girlfriend Jane is choking right in front of him, and Walter just stares. There's no instinct to reach out as he knew the issues saving her would cause. So Walter stood completely still watching someone lose their life, making a quiet decision about whether to intervene. He thought she was a problem. Jane had leverage over Walter through Jesse. She knew about the money, and she was pulling Jesse away from him and the operation. In Walter's mind, she was a liability. And to Walter, liabilities get removed. Watch his face in this moment. That shift is everything. The horror tells you that he understands what's happening. The acceptance tells you he's decided not to stop it. Jane had a whole life ahead of her. She was 26 years old. What makes this a defining psychopathic moment from Walter isn't just the act itself, it's the emptiness shown on screen. Most people in that situation wouldn't even think, they'd just react. The human instinct to help someone in distress is almost involuntary, and Walter had to actively suppress that instinct. He had to choose to stand there, and he chose it without feeling anything. But was this emptiness triggered by the family pressure, or maybe even the cancer diagnosis? No. It was always within him. Walter White is one of the most studied characters in television history, and yet most people who watch the show still spent years debating whether Walter was ever truly a good man who lost his weight. He wasn't. The cancer didn't corrupt Walter White. It only meant he had nothing to lose. In his head, it gave him permission to finally stop pretending he was something he wasn't. Walter White was never ordinary. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. 3 traits that were always there, buried under a life that never matched the one he believed he deserved. That's the Dark Triad, and Walter White wore all 3 without anyone catching on for so long. File 6 is coming soon. Stay tuned.